Okay, so welcome everyone. My name is Alan Thompson. I teach journalism here at Carleton, and I'm the director of something called the Center for Media and Transitional Societies, which is a research center in the School of Journalism. Syria is very much a transitional society. It's probably in the wrong place in that transition, but it's in transition. And for journalists, it's a pretty interesting place to observe. I think for journalism students, we can probably learn a lot of bad lessons about journalism, I would argue, in the way Syria is being covered right now. It's not being covered very well at all, but I guess there's the usual excuse that it's a very difficult environment in which to work. The regime doesn't exactly make it easy, I guess, for journalists to cover this story. But I do worry a bit that, are we interested enough? Are we trying hard enough? Are we paying enough attention? We don't very often hear from people who practice journalism in Syria. We hear, I think, mostly from European journalists who have managed to go to Syria. So tonight we are very lucky to have a kind of a double feature. A couple weeks ago, Paul Watson from the Toronto Star was here speaking about his work primarily in Afghanistan. But Paul had also mentioned to me that he had recently been in Aleppo reporting for the Toronto Star, and had the chance to meet this very interesting journalist who was working on the ground in Syria, in Aleppo, Yasser al-Haji, who had worked for a state-run media and then found himself in this position where he couldn't do that any longer, and is now involved with the opposition to the Assad regime, but is also still a journalist, is still a witness to the conflict, is tweeting frantically, covering events, but also finds himself in a position where he is facilitating other journalists. He's helping others to try and understand what's going on in Syria. So I wanted to ask Paul, who really introduced me to Yasser, if he could introduce Yasser to you and explain a little bit about who he is and the kind of work that he sees him doing, and then we'll ask Yasser to talk to us about his work. I guess some media find it hard to define whether you're a journalist or an activist these days. Media outlet in town was interested in talking to Yasser and then changed their minds. They thought, well, he's an activist, not a journalist. So even more reason for us to hear from him and talk about that interesting transitional place for journalism in an environment like Syria. So I'll ask Paul Watson, who is one of Canada's most celebrated war correspondents, writers about conflict, who is himself in a bit of a transition in terms of how we should be doing journalism, how we should be covering environments like Syria. So I'll ask Paul if he can give Yasser a proper introduction, and then we'll turn it over to Yasser, and then we should have lots of time for questions and answers. And just so you know, we're recording this event. We now record these occasions in the School of Journalism. We have a team that does that on the record, and then we post them to YouTube later on. So you can check the Faculty of Public Affairs YouTube channel later on for a record of this event. So, Paul.
Okay. If you don't mind, I'll remain seated. I'm not going to speak long anyway. Or should I go there?
Maybe
Better.
Roll a bit closer, just so
Okay.
you're more audible.
I'll go here. Because this question came up in a previous session, I'll begin my introduction with this point. I was asked by journalism students, how do you find so-called fixers, the term that we use for people like Yasser, that is foreign people like me who don't speak the local language or know how to move around safely. We reach out to local experts, who we call fixers, who interpret for us and try to keep us alive. In Yasser's case, I met him because I had spent months lobbying my bosses for permission to go to Syria. They were against it for a number of reasons, part of which is cost, because of insurance costs and that sort of thing. They didn't want me to get kidnapped or killed. I finally persuaded them that we should do this because their number one question was, who's your fixer going to be? They wanted to be assured as best they could that we could trust that I'd be in the hands of someone who would keep me from getting kidnapped. Now that's impossible to assure, but that's how they think. In order to get the best person I could possibly get, I reached out to a colleague who I knew had done excellent work in Syria, a photographer named Moises Saman, who works with the legendary Magnum Photo Agency on contract with the New York Times. And I said, I think when he met you, he was working for the New Yorker. I just emailed him and I said, Moises, you did great stuff in Syria. Who did you work with? He said, Yasser Haji. Here's his email address. So I emailed Yasser and I said, I work for the Toronto Star. I'd like to do what you did with Moises. Can you help me? And he said, sure, I can help you. So I got a bunch of more questions from my bosses saying, well, why should we trust this guy and how do we know? So I answered all their questions. I asked Yasser questions. He answered nicely. And they were eventually convinced. Yasser's unique in the world of fixers because he is a real journalist. Oftentimes fixers are taxi drivers or English majors or things other than journalists. Yasser worked for a state-run newspaper under the Assad regime, was a UN correspondent for how many years? 7 years, based in New York, reporting in the UN for the regime. And then ended up in Cyprus, I believe. And then, come the revolution, he, like many good-minded Syrians, thought, I have to make a choice. He went with the opposition. Once you join the opposition in what is now a civil war, you, by definition, have a point of view. So, yes, he's a journalist, but he is also a member of the opposition. I don't see any contradiction in that, and we can discuss the nuts and bolts of that because I happen to think that the way the world has changed, we need more activist journalists in Canada. I think that there's a great tradition of that in the West, and that we lost it for reasons of economics and finances, and that we should regain it, but we can have that discussion. Before I hand you over to the real expert, I want to put this in your mind. As I left Syria on this week-long visit and was back in southern Turkey, I bumped into a couple of old colleagues, and I was lamenting the fact that this nightmare was going on 24 hours a day and was getting worse. And there didn't seem to be any public pressure in the West, especially in Canada, among Western countries, to do anything to stop it, apart from platitudes and sending some aid here, food and medical supplies here and there. These journalists said, well, yeah, no one wants to get kidnapped, because recently, a short time before this, Richard Engel, the chief foreign correspondent for NBC, had been kidnapped, but was then released, rescued, in fact, by the Free Syrian Army. It was enough to say, yes, no one wants to be kidnapped, but then they said, besides, it's all on YouTube anyway. So this struck me as something that I don't think most journalists in the West understand, and certainly not the broader public. The social media that we're all trumpeting so much these days has now become an excuse for Western reporters to stop taking the risks that we need to take in order to write the stories, do the coverage that mobilizes our governments to stop this kind of stuff. And for all of my life as a journalist, that's what journalists did. That's why I got interested in foreign reporting in the first place. You could make a difference. But we are retreating faster than anybody knows. And I think Syria is in the misfortunate position of being at the peak of the journalistic retreat. So now everyone says, well, let the public watch it on YouTube. And meanwhile, our governments dither. And I'll hand you over to Yasser.
I like to say Salam Alaikum in Arabic. Salam Alaikum, that means peace upon you and cannot be better than this. Peace upon you, all of you, and peace on Syria and the Syrian people. Being a journalist in Syria, it's really very challenging job. In the beginning, we used to demonstrate. We will go to demonstrate 5-10 people. The only way we could show our demonstration is peaceful, using cellular phone mobile phone to videotape the demonstration, and after that upload it on YouTube. Doing this simple things for you here in the West or in Canada, very simple things, for us was very challenging. And it's not only that, you could be put in prison, tortured, and even killed because you're using cellular phone to videotape that simple demonstration. Informers, they can report you to the government. Government come to your house 3 o'clock in the morning, they will arrest you, they will torture you, and nobody knows what happened to you later. After that, things become more difficult. If you go on demonstration, the government has snipers. Anyone has a video mobile phone in his hand, they could shoot his hand or shoot his head and kill him. And that happened to too many people inside Aleppo got killed, or in Syria got killed because they were videotaping demonstrations. That's, I mean, simple things. In the West, it's very complicated to get you killed when you work with dictatorship or when you deal with dictatorship. The Syrian revolution, it's about freedom and democracy, to get rid of dictatorship. Unfortunately, the rest of the world stand still and watching the Syrian people get killed every day and doing nothing. So far in Syria, around 70 to 80,000 people got killed, and around 200,000 being in jail. Most of them, we don't know what will happen to them, or they're still alive or not. And if you talk to any average guys in Syria in the beginning, okay, we like for no problem to talk to foreigner journalists. After a while, they get upset. Can't take journalists to them anymore. Why? We say, okay, we talk to journalists all the time. For 2 years being killed, no one asks about us. Why we should talk to journalists anymore? And some of the journalists are spies. That's true. Some journalists are spies. They make things complicated in a certain way. For example, when you put a video or you put a picture on iPhone, and you transmit that picture back to your newspaper, the signal will be tracked by the government and know where the picture is being taken. They will hit that house in that night or in the morning by a big bomb and kill everyone inside. This is small things. Paul, we talked about how you can be an activist and journalist. It's two different things. You can be a journalist, being honest, reporting, criticizing everyone, criticizing whatever you see wrong. That's been your job as being a journalist. When the Syrian Army made mistakes, we reported that, we criticized that. That's been part of being journalist. Being activist, that you're supporting the people that are fighting for their freedom and democracy. You cannot see someone fighting for his freedom and not to support him. And if you're talking about the truth of journalism, that's what it's all about. You report the truth, what's going on the ground. But you talk about moral things. And when you demonstrate for freedom and democracy, that's moral. That's a very valid moral point. And you cannot support it, you cannot stand still and not support that. So being an activist and journalist, sometimes it does not really contradict each other or does not affect each other in a bad way. That's very simple things. And anyone who wants to ask questions, I'm open to hear from you.
Since Paul spent a lot of time with you, and I don't know if anyone else in the room has been in Syria recently, maybe you can start us off and guide us through a few questions, things that you know, yes or no's, and that we should talk about, and then we can open it up to anyone in the room.
I'll throw you a hard one first, because I'm of the opinion that even the reporting that is done by foreigners in Syria focuses on the conflict, but leaves out the dark sort of background. And by that I mean foreign intelligence agencies and how they are meddling in Syria and doing things which prolong the conflict, or making promises and not delivering on those promises. Such as, for instance, the CIA promising that weapons were coming last summer and they never came. What can you tell people about what goes on in those sort of dirty dealing that they may not be seeing in the newspaper?
Um, Unfortunately, and it's not really everyone care about freedom and democracy, especially when it comes to the relationship between countries. Or everyone care about his interest. They don't care about the people. So when this country, for example, like the United States, CIA, or another intelligence, they will care about their back home, what they were supposed to, their rating or their job back home. So when things really got tough in Syria, like the CIA or other intelligence agencies, they came and said, okay, we're going to deliver weapons to you. Help us with some information. We provide that information and help them come. They will come 10 months, 10 days later or 1 month later, say the same thing. And the same things will keep us promises. It's not only CIA, it's other intelligence did that too. For example, we have one airport in Aleppo, in north of Aleppo, which is the only base controlled by the government and still controlled by the government in the north of Aleppo. The Turkish intelligence, they came and said, okay, give us specific details about the airport, we're going to help you and we're going to use our artillery to destroy that airport. We did provide them with the help they need, but they never helped us to target that airport or for us to be able to liberate this. So what I want to stress here, the intelligence, they don't have moral really. They care about their position and their job back home. They don't care that much about the people who get killed. Maybe if sometimes people get killed, that's for their own interest, it's good. That's plain as that.
Any questions that arise out of that, sir? There must be one question that arises out of that. The cynicism of foreign intelligence agencies.
Yeah, but at the same time, like, I don't think that, like, if I was a CIA agent or if I was a person who belongs to my country, I care about first what my country's going to go through or what it should do. So how could you actually go forward, go ahead and make sure or tell those CIA agents that, for example, if weapons went into Syria, they will not be misused, or if weapons, or if they actually helped you in the attack against the airport, you're talking about what are they gonna, like, how are you gonna assure them that those weapons are not gonna happen? Like the same thing happened in Afghanistan when the whole Soviet Union situation. So they gave the money and they gave the weapons, and the weapons were used against them, especially the Patriots. So and I'm Syrian, by the way, so I'm not really against it. I'm with the revolution, but I just want to have your opinion on it.
If they want to help you, they will help you. If they want to find excuses, they always find excuses not to help you. Regarding the perpetrated missile, for example, or the anti-aircraft, what we ask sometimes for anti-aircraft missiles. The anti-aircraft missiles could very easy control through technology. How long was within 1 month could be used, after the 1 month could be for the password being changed. It's a lot of things can do to control who has a weapon, when will be fired. But they choose not to do so just to give us promises. And they saying, excuse, we'll go to Jabhat al-Nusra, to extremists. This is not true. So there are a way to control these things, but simply they don't want to help. When the conflict started, okay, after a few months, we went everywhere to say, okay guys, the conflict will go on, we'll have more extremists, we'll have foreign fighters in our land because we're getting no help. People getting killed every day. And when you get killed every day and no one helps you, you will accept anyone else offer you help. It doesn't matter who he is. Even if he was prior, he was your enemy, and you are in so desperate need, you can accept his help. So, okay, they kept silence and they did nothing. Foreign fighters came into Syria, we accept them. You can't say no. Extremists become in Syria because they're being pushed to the corner. When you isolate people or people get killed every day, they become more extreme. There's no question about that, and you cannot tell them why. They lost hope and they become extreme. And now we have foreign fighters, we have extremists. Now it's not too much, we still can deal with it, but their excuse now, all you have foreign fighters, you have extremists, you create it. And now you blame us for it. How you can justify that? We told you, okay, this is what's going to happen. We know it. We are on the ground. We see every day how it happens. You did nothing. This is what you got the result. If this conflict in Syria goes on for a long time, for 1 more year, we'll have a lot more extremists. Maybe you see me extremist. I'm honest. I have one guy who used to work for me. The army attacked our town in April 2012. They went inside his house with a tank. He used to work with me. When he came back and he saw his house destroyed, he joined the FSA. He joined the Free Syrian Army. And a lot of people have the same things happen to them. When you use violence against people, you don't know what their reaction is. They will go to the other side. They will go to more extreme to get back at you. That's normal things to do. And this is what happened in Syria.
I don't think the Free Syrian Army is actually a problem. The problem is Jabhat Nusra, Rush, and Liwat Tawheed. Like, where did you go in Aleppo?
We're talking about Liwat Tawheed. Okay.
I know.
This one second, one second.
Let's put Liwat Tawheed on the side.
Okay.
Let's talk about how to
أحرار الشام جبهة النصرة, okay?
Yeah.
جبهة النصرة in Aleppo is less than 500 fighters. أحرار الشام less than 300. How many fighters in Aleppo? 30,000 soldiers. So 500 from Jabhat al-Nusra. You put it together to next to 30,000. Nothing. It's less than 2%, 3%. But the foreign media does not go to report about the Free Syrian Army, go to report about Jabhat al-Nusra, unfortunately. And everyone has a beard, they call him Jabhat al-Nusra or Jabhat. Come on, be a journalist, okay? Talk to this guy, see what he's all about, ask him about his views after that report. Not see his long beard and see about him that he's Jabhat al-Nusra. This is not journalism. That's doing your job, you have to do it right. And most journalists, they don't.
I want to ask you about the journalism. The work that you're doing, how do you do it? The nuts and bolts. What are you using? Are you using Twitter? Are you using YouTube? How are you documenting what you're seeing and getting that information to the wider audience?
We used to go to Aleppo. Aleppo is 30 kilometers from my town. 30 kilometers, we need 2 hours to get to Aleppo, was controlled by the government. So we need 2 hours to get to Aleppo. After that, we use a simple video cameras or mobile phone. We go back to the Turkish side to upload it because we have no internet. After that, it takes us 2 hours to upload 5 minutes video. So this is how we used to do it. It's not easy, but a lot of people also get killed, but it's having cameras. And, so this is most of the time how we used to do it. Now lately it become a little bit easier because the area north of Aleppo to the Turkish side been liberated. So we have Turkish internet, we can do that, or we use, some people help us with satellite internet. So we use it now, it become more easy. And the government does not have the manpower to control everything. For example, in the beginning I used to work with journalists, we're not allowing them to use beacon. So now we are allowing them to use beacon because the government does not control that much anymore, it does not have resources to track these things.
And I see you on Twitter. Are you using Twitter?
We use Twitter, we use Facebook a lot.
But how are you actually, what's the connection that you're getting? Are you doing
Internet.
it from your phone? You're doing
Your
it
phone.
from a
Your
cafe
phone.
or?
Your phone. You use your phone. And the reason you don't do it from cafe, in the beginning was a lot of informants. So you don't go to a coffee shop and start doing that. You go to your own house or you go out in the field and you do that. Even small news, you have to like secretly report the news. Because a lot of people, they will report the government will attack your house 3 o'clock in the morning, beat up your wife or beat up your kids if they don't find you. So using with Twitter is not too much, Facebook and YouTube all the time.
That sounds like journalism to me. Any other questions?
Before we sort of talk about this one, just wondering in terms of Free Syrian Army, I know you were not for the foreign intervention, but what's sort of the wider view within the opposition or the Free Syrian Army specific intervention army?
Most people in Syria, they don't want intervention. They want to be able to protect themselves. For example, the worst things we get fighter jet bombing us or using cluster bombs. I want to bring to your attention cluster bombs. What is cluster bombs is? Cluster bombs, it's a barrel filled with 48 small bombs. And the 48 small bombs has a lot of bombs inside each one. So when cluster bombs being used from here, will go 2 kilometers wide and will affect everyone within 2 kilometers. So this is a fact. We want something to use anti-fighter jets, so they cannot use, cluster bomb against us. Other things, it's Scud missiles. I want this also say to you, Scud missiles. I have some pictures, maybe it's here or not. Scud missile, it's 11 meters long missiles. If we'll hit one block, we'll destroy the total block, kill everyone inside, and reduce it to rubble. The government been using that, and thanks to the NATO allies or the NATO or the Western world, they used perpetrated missile. They didn't put it on the side of Turkey, on the border between Turkey and Syria. They put it 60 kilometers inside, so they cannot use it inside Syria, because the limit for Patriot is 60 kilometers. So if they put it on the Turkish-Syrian side, they can reach Aleppo and protect Aleppo. They didn't do that. They put it inside Turkish border 60 kilometers, so they can protect the Turkish side. And so the government, of course, they knew that, and they're using Scud missiles to kill people all the time. The whole of one Scud missile is 6-7 meters deep and 20 meters long. The hole they make. And it's, according to the government, they're using Scud missiles to fight terrorist armed group. So I'll leave it to you to believe that the government fighting terrorist armed group by using Scud missiles and cluster bombs inside the city. You see here one side cluster bombs. I was in Aleppo one day. It was Friday. Friday people, they don't go to work. They stay home. They use cluster bomb inside the city to kill as much people as they can, because they know the people are not going to work. They're on street, kids playing. They killed a lot of kids. Government criminal, they do criminal act and killing civilians. They don't care who they kill.
Just as you're watching these, you'll see an image, one of your images, of just nothing but destruction on both sides of the road. As far as you can see, that's a Scud missile.
There's a Scud missile.
We'll see. Sorry.
I met one guy, I don't know if you have his pictures. He was standing there on one Scud side. And he told me he lost 11 of his family, including his wife, his kids, and his wife was pregnant in one bomb. And they pulled him from underneath the rubble, and his head had shrapnel all over him. This is how the government fighting terrorist armed group.
I wonder as well, there's a lot of citizen journalists in Syria. In a way, the Syrian conflict is the most reported and the
Yes.
least reported at the same time.
That's
There's
exactly
so many
right.
images. I was in the Human Rights Watch office in Beirut, and they're just flooded with images and videos. So there's a lot of that happening. So what do you think between citizen journalism versus other kind of journalism? What's the impact of citizen journalism on knowledge about Syria and kind of the state of reporting about Syria?
Citizen journalism, I think, is very good. But the problem with citizen journalists, they are not very accurate. Okay. For example, we say, okay, if I want to listen to citizen journalists, our question is accuracy, numbers, what's being used, how many being killed. So they will report, okay, one fighter jet attacked Mara. I am from Mara, for example. Sometimes it didn't attack Mara. I'm flying by over Mara to go somewhere else. So very good intention, but it really has to be more professional. But the problem with citizen journalists is not very accurate. It's my own opinion. Otherwise, very good.
This is my current obsession, so pardon me if this sounds slightly cynical, it's not. To me, the best thing you can learn in professional journalism training in a school like this is not how to gather the information. That, pretty much anyone can do that. You ask a lot of questions. You get tired, you keep asking more questions. And you tape it so you've got it accurately. The real challenge is to market it, to get people to care, right? All the citizen journalists in Syria are doing absolutely incredible work. If you haven't seen this, ask me afterwards and I'll give you the link to it. There's a YouTube thing that was posted on the New York Times in their Watching the War weblog of all you see is a camera that's obviously on a tripod of some sort, and it's pointing through a hole from a shell blast or something in a wall. And you hear two people softly talking in the background. They're obviously citizen journalists, and they're not shooting or doing anything else. Then you hear a single gunshot and a bird flies up, and a couple of more gunshots, and then out of nowhere, a T-54 tank is directly in front of that hole, and the barrel is pointing right at it, and then kaboom, 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 and nothing. People like that are dying every day shooting videos like that and tweeting and doing all that, but all the Western governments can just ignore it because it's not packaged right. There's no, as I've said earlier, there's no Christian Amanpour, to use the Bosnia Sarajevo example, to stand up live on TV in a town hall meeting with the President of the United States and say, Mr. President, when are you going to do something? That's the difference to me.
Sorry, just to follow up points on that. So in the face of, the media that's going in right now and trying to gather stories, as we were talking before, they are looking for somewhat sensationalist stories, like the use of child soldiers that are really sometimes taken out of context. And in the face of these images that the governments can ignore because they're not marketed in the right way, what is it that you are doing to counter that? And when does it stop becoming just an effort to counter that rather than actually reporting objectively about what's going on?
We have one accident about 1 month ago. One guy from the AFP, the French news agency, report was child soldiers being trained in one town. I heard the news from different sources. So I went to that town to look for this training camp as he claimed. I found nothing from that town. I spoke to the civic council of that town, said we don't have any training camp here. I looked furthermore for this, and I found an accident happened in the next village. One father, he lost his kids by fighter jet attack. He got so upset. He has another kid. He was 15 years old. He took him to train him on using Kalashnikov. The journalist went there and photographed that father with his son. And later he put in his news agency that was training camp for children. And some newspaper, Lebanese newspaper, the Daily Star of Lebanon, they took that story from that agency and put it on their news. And after that, Syrian newspaper took it on. When I spoke to the Lebanese newspaper, why are you doing that? Did you make sure the story is credible? They said, well, no, we don't care. It's not our problem. Talk to AFP. I talked to the AFP. Why are you doing like this? Give me evidence. He said, no, you have to talk to our reporter. So there are some people, they do this intentionally to misreport things or to overlook something. And this is affect us very bad. I mean, as an example, I told you, most of the Free Syrian Army now have beard. They don't care anymore about their look, or what they eat, or what they wear anymore. Because you could die in a minute. When you are inside Aleppo, there are snipers, they are shelling randomly, there are fighter jet, everything. Anytime in Aleppo you could get killed. Who will care about his beard or whatever he is wearing? Some journalists, they will go and take some pictures of some guys with beard, and they have black flag here, that's it, Jabhat al-Nusra. This is not Jabhat al-Nusra. We liberated the town of Assads on 19th of July, 2011. I was there half an hour after it got liberated, and I saw black flag on the roof. And the journalist was next to me, say, okay, this is Jabhat al-Nusra liberated. Jabhat al-Nusra wasn't even there. Some kids are 10, 12 years old, they climbed up the roof and they put this flag. They say, La ilaha illallah Muhammad Rasulullah. That common things in Arabic to say, in Islam. And they reported that Jabhat al-Nusra liberated that town. So there are a lot of people, they don't care. They want just put sensation to their story, maybe they get more money. And sometimes we discuss with journalists. I work with all kind of journalists, for example, New York Times, Sky News, BBC. Some people say, okay, we have good day for us. When we say have a good day for us, he has good story, a lot of people got killed. You look at him and say, no, sorry, I apologize, okay? You had bad day, I had good day. As a Syrian had bad day, a lot of people got killed. For him as a journalist, he has good day, he has something to report about. So this is sometimes things happen in journalism like that. I have to tell you one story. One day I was with one guy, his name Richard Spencer from the Daily Telegraph of London. We went to meet one commander, say commander. As soon as we got to his office, we got bombed. So all of us were on the ground, the glasses flying all over. And I told him, Richard, we didn't finish the meeting. And he looked at me and said, yes, sir, we're glad we're alive. You're talking about the meeting now? Well, some people are a little bit different sometimes.
Can I add just one practical problem, and maybe you can solve this when you go back. I was told that before the hospitals have been targeted. Assad has literally he destroyed the biggest hospital in Aleppo, right?
Yes.
So the hospitals that are left, there's one that's much smaller. It doesn't have enough supplies, and they have to keep shipping people an hour's plus drive away into Turkey. We just happened to be there when there had been an attack in the city, and a whole bunch of people were brought in on pickup trucks and taxis, and anything that would move, literally, was bringing in women, children, etc. So of course, since I was there, I took my camera out and started videoing and taking pictures, and within a minute to 2 minutes, people started firing weapons in the air and shouting, and everyone said, don't take any more pictures. And they explained to me later that because so many hospitals have been targeted, people think that if you take photographs, then Assad will use it to target that hospital. So I said, fair enough, that's a very logical problem. But in terms of me telling a story that will move people to action, I need to get into that hospital, and I need to film and photograph children who have been either killed or very severely wounded in what is effectively a war crime. Because if I don't have that, I can describe it until my face turns blue, but no one's going to be moved by it.
Okay, there's a solution to this. Instead of taking pictures outside the hospital, show the doors of the hospital, so if the government agent sees that door, he will know where this hospital is. You get inside the hospital, you take pictures from inside. And you show the trauma was going on inside, but you're not identifying where the hospital is. Because the government, it's regardless for all kind of laws or humanitarian laws, they bomb hospitals, bakeries, every gathering could be possible, schools. They could, where they find a lot of gathering, they will bomb it. And this is the reason why sometimes we have difficult to deal with it. Being accused, as I said, as a spy sometimes. Because when you take a picture of the hospital and you put it on your newspaper, the second day the government will hit that hospital, will kill a lot of people there. This is why sometimes they object to that. But if you talk to them in a certain way and you go inside, they will allow you to do that, will be no problem.
Right. Just one other point. This leads to a larger debate, and I don't want to be the one who sounds like he supports regulating journalists, because it's a dangerous path. But I know that there are being efforts undertaken now to try to screen people who say they're journalists to have some basis of a formal accreditation or something. It scares me if it goes the wrong way, but it could be used to great good if you had something that says, I'm a journalist, and everyone in the FSA recognizes it, and then they can say, okay, you have access. You can go into the hospital, no problem. It's a very dangerous thing to start because it may go the wrong way.
We started this discussion about 2 weeks ago. I have discussion because I have some kind of moral responsibility about journalism in Aleppo. We discussed with many journalists because a lot of young journalists, they go into Aleppo, freelancer, they know nothing about war, nothing about journalism. Some of them get killed or injured or kidnapped. So we put out the word, what we're supposed to do with them, how we can protect them. The question is, do we have a moral responsibility to forbid someone 20 years old going inside Aleppo, claiming he's a freelancer journalist, to let him go to Aleppo and get kidnapped or hurt or killed? We do have moral responsibility, not allow him to go there, because we know the situation. The other things, what Paul said, are we controlling journalism? No, we're not controlling journalism. We're controlling a little bit the danger everyone will put themselves to. A lot of young guys, they want to go to war zone to report about war zone because they think it's exciting. It's adventure for them. That's true, but also you put yourself in danger and you jeopardize our work, our revolution. If we hear one journalist got kidnapped or killed inside Syria or inside Aleppo, we'll have no journalists to come in 1 month. So that's also affecting us. So what we did, we asked every journalist who want to go to Syria or to Aleppo to have a letter of recommendation plus ID card. I think that's everyone can live with. We're not controlling whatever you want to do. You are free to whatever to report, but please give us a letter of recommendation and ID card so we know someone is responsible for you somehow, and you are a really journalist, not you are an adventure or something.
There were two. You got a question, and there was somebody behind you as well, and a third. So why don't we just go 1, 2, 3?
Wasn't really a question. I just want to add to what you're saying. The cluster bomb that I was talking about it's pretty sad because when I went, I was actually in Mara last December, and what happened is that you could see I was there, and then the cluster bomb went down. It was just like I think 300, 400 meters away from where I stood, and it took a guy was on a motorcycle. It took away his head, and was 30 meters away from where he was, and the whole motorcycle was burned to ground. And on the other hand, there's another weapon that I think you know, but you forgot to speak about is the barrel. The barrel, every single weapon or rocket or missile that's used against any person is you could just go on the ground or lie on the ground, and if you're lucky, all the missile would go outside. The barrel is the only weapon that if it hits and it kills. It kills the radius within, even if you're under anywhere, if you're in the basement. I just want to say that because a lot of journalists have been saying that the regime are actually targeting FSA or targeting Jabhat Nusra or targeting Tawheed or whoever they're fighting against. But the reality is that for this barrel, there's nothing that you can target with. It's from a helicopter, opens and they throw it with their foot, and where it goes, it goes. There's no targeting method for that to happen. So it could kill anyone in any place at any time, and it's so scary to a point that you cannot even describe it. And like you said, like I'm probably a baby journalist, like you said, and I went there for the adventure, but it was not a good experience. It was a bad experience. I was almost killed like a million times. I don't know how to deal with these situations. I went out and like I felt that I went for nothing, because when I went out, who would listen? I'm just a 20 years old person who's just trying to go out and tell people about it. There's probably 2, 3 newspapers that talk to me, and there are other. But before going there, CBC, CTV, and everyone like, yeah, go, we're gonna support, we're gonna talk to you, blah 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 blah. I was in there, I was like, okay, when? They're like, we don't have time, blah blah blah. We're sorry, not today, maybe tomorrow. And I was like, okay, like I went there, you know me, and you know that I was there. I met you before I go. They're like, well, sorry, we can't do this. I just want to mention just how dangerous it is to be there, and how bad it is there, and how no one really cares unless you're actually a real journalist. And if you're actually a real journalist and you go there, there's a million things that goes through, and a lot of people are afraid to be in there.
You mentioned that story about the guy got killed off. His head
Yeah,
cut off.
12,
Yes.
2012.
That bomb.
I was
yes,
there.
yes.
We were there.
Yeah, it's my village.
Yeah.
It's my village. That bomb was like when they used a lot of bombs, 1.5 kilometers, and all this area was cluster bombs. Start from my house, destroyed some part of my house, and went to the middle of the town when this guy got his head cut.
When I got there, they saw me with cameras, and like I looked white, so they were like, okay, so they thought I was actually a journalist. So they started taking me to the place, and I was like, this is the first second I got into Aleppo, got into Mara, and they start taking me to the place. Imagine seeing a head on the ground, and they're expecting you to shoot a video of it, and then taking you, and then they took me to the hospital for me to see what's happening there, and you see like 4 or 5 dead, or like I think 10 dead bad there, like 30 injured, and you look at it, it was like how could you do this? I went out, and like I was almost crying, and the people in the car started talking about it like something that happened, like normal. It's just a normal thing for them, and just this just makes me like really hard and hurt what's happening.
I want to mention one thing this. In Aleppo, there one area called the river. The river, it's a small river run from beginning of Aleppo to the end of Aleppo. Every day, people picking up bodies from the river. The government execute these people, and they dump them in the river. In the end, we're controlled by the FSA. They will wait for the bodies, and every day will pick them up. I went like 1 week ago to one area when they collect the bodies. I saw like, I have pictures with me, I saw like 10 bodies lying down. After 2 hours I left and I went back home. The second day I woke up, I'm really upset. Why I'm upset with myself? When I was there with the people to pick up their bodies, their loved one, I never said to anyone, I'm sorry for your loss. For your loved one got killed and you saw his body. It hit me not the first day, it hit me second day. That's become normal to you. You don't really don't make sense sometimes. That's it. It's part of your life. You see every day the people. And this is very bad for everyone. For us as adults, affect us. What about the children? What the effect about the children, the women, the pregnant and everything? This is something we're gonna pay for it for the next many years to come. The Syrian generation of the war will pay for it for the future to come.
A quick defense of starting reporters in war, having been one 25 some years ago. A veteran combat reporter said to me, the day you stop crying is the day you have to quit. The point being that the passion that you had and the visceral reaction you had to what you saw is exactly what the public needs to feel. Because when they're hearing it from people who are jaded or who wear like the epaulets and like the flak vest and the helmet and all that phony stuff, it starts to become unreal to them. They need to hear exactly what you felt. They need to feel that, because then they'll say, stop it.
The thing is that, like I said, I've tried to email, I believe more than 400 journalists in Canada. I got replied, before going there, I got replies from over 50 supporting and loving and yeah, we'll do this, we'll do that. Coming back, I was like, okay, so I'm here, what can we do? I got replies from 3. And one of them is the embassy newspaper, and one of them was actually Jenna here. And
Right. Don't get me wrong, I'm a proud Canadian, but I really think that's a problem with Canada. Don't be afraid to pitch to the US and Europe. They'll take it in a second.
Actually,
There's a lot of Canadians who do great work for American publications and European.
Voice of America, I talked to them and they said, yeah, we'll be there, but they had the same exact thing. The thing is that they need to, like, people look at us as like, okay, I'm a 4th year communication. They don't look at me as someone who would actually is able to explain what's happening, but they don't hear, they just see the email. They don't listen to us, they just see the email. But what we've seen like at that age, and what people are seeing there at that age is just quiet, like scarring for the rest of your life. Like, it's just, if you could just imagine with me, I'm sorry, I'm probably taking over your time, I'm so sorry. But it's just, if you could imagine with me, like, just how the helicopter would pass over a village, or pass over a city in Aleppo, or in Bindish, or in William County. It's so freaky and scary to the point that you can't even live with it. Like, I was here after it, and I heard a helicopter on top of like a helicopter just passing over Carlton. I literally went beside the car, and that's how scary it is. Like, it's just, you just see what's happening. You just wait. I think you know the word trumpet. That word, if I hear it, trumpet means it tilted. The plane tilted, and that tilted, it means that it's gonna throw something. After it, you hear the whistle. A lot of people say, okay, the whistle, and then you hear the explosion. A lot of people are like, yeah, explosion is scary. I was like, no, explosion is amazing. If you hear the explosion, you're alive. You're not dead.
You've got the top of a great story. I would read that story. What you just told me in the first 3 paragraphs, I would read that story.
But who would listen?
No, believe me, there are. And people will say no 100 times. Anyone who's ever got anything published will tell you this. They got 100 rejections before they got 1 acceptance, and the 1 acceptance started their career. So I don't want to get you killed or badly injured, but if you have a feel for it and want to do it, don't give up.
And let's put you guys together afterwards to connect and make sure you can follow up. I had 2 more, and I see another hand. So I don't know if the man in the corner is stretching or wants to ask a question, but we'll do these 2 and then I'll come to Jen. Yes.
Do you think minorities in Syria, like Christians, Kurds, and Shias, will be targeted more and more if the number of extremists continues to grow?
No, I think on the opposite, on the contrary, they will be more protected. The whole regime about sectarianism and people be killed Christians. That's total lies and propaganda. They use it to be in the same power. The FSA went to Aleppo in August last year. It's now 8 months. One Christian got killed by some idiot from the FSA. How many Christians got killed in Aleppo? One. So if this is about going to kill minorities or kill Christians, okay, how come nobody died so far? That's one thing. The other things about the Kurds. 40 years in power, Bashar al-Assad and his father, there are a lot of Kurds, they have no passport. They have no right to vote. They have no proper schools. They cannot use their language. So how come government, they care so much about minorities, they give no passport to the Kurds? Or they have no schools? So the whole question about sectarianism, I think that's total propaganda. And if you talk to the Syrian people, you will know, you will find by yourself, this is not true. A couple of weeks ago in Aleppo, they cooked the food in church. They took it to mosque to distribute it. They cooked it in one area called Franciscan. It's Christian area. They took it to Muslim mosque called As-Sabil, and they distribute to all people of Aleppo to eat. That happened in Aleppo during the war. So the Syrian people are not sectarian, and no one has to worry about minorities in the future. Unfortunately, you listen to state-run media or things scare people off. We're going to kill you, so we're going to kill you, and that's what's happening.
There's one here.
I just want journalists from all over the world which report in Syria. What do you think the advantages or disadvantages are when you are a Syrian journalist?
I don't see any disadvantage. I think Syria, after we will succeed in the revolution, we want to be open. So it's good for us to have an idea about free journalism. It's good for us, we try to let journalists operate freely and write freely what they write. So it's good for us. There are some people, okay, we're not used to this kind of exposure. Okay, we get some hospital got bombed or whatever, makeshift hospital got bombed because of journalism, sometimes happen, but it's no real disadvantage of being out of journalists inside Syria. That's the way I see it.
Do you think we have any advantages over journalists in Syria?
Yes, I do, because we have different mentalities. So mentality play a big role in war. I know when someone really upset and he's about to do something wrong, and maybe you don't notice that. For me, I know how he feels, how he works with his face, with his body language. So I know when he's upset, it's time to leave. For you, maybe find it normal. For that, they come to you, the journalist, okay, help us. We went one day, me and one guy from the New Yorker, his name John Lee Anderson, he's a very known journalist. And we have an appointment with one Kurdish leader, and so he said, okay, I'm running a bit late, please go to the school, wait for us. I said, okay, we went to school to wait for him, and was two young guys at that school. We start talking to him, and it was okay, everything was okay. Suddenly they asked, one guy asked John Lee Anderson, where do you come from? And he told him from the America, from the United States. And this guy got upset. He went inside the school, he got a shotgun and came out at us. And he told us to get the hell out of there. John Lee Anderson, he got a bit paranoid, or he started to panic. I started talking to this guy, I calmed him down, after that we walked away. After that he said, John Lee, why don't you leave when I told you to leave? I said, if we left at that time, he will go after us. But by staying there for 2 minutes, talk to him, that will make us better. And so that's what happened. So because I know his mentality, I can deal with him better. This way is a little bit advantage.
Daniel, there's a question.
When does the case against military rebellion become unjustified? I'm thinking particularly in the Middle East, where there's so many interests, internal and external, who always rush in. And it's painful under Saddam Hussein, under Assad. People are being tortured and dying, thousands. But with military rebellion, that number is escalated to hundreds of thousands. The horror in Syria is awful. Is there not a case for not having it?
Okay. We have the Ba'ath Party now for 40 years. For 40 years running Syria. If you like give a roughly estimate from how many people died within these 40 years, you will say over 200,000. 40,000 died in Hama uprising in 82. So if we let 40 years, we have 200,000. Or we rebel with military, but we have to emphasize here, we didn't pick up arms because we want to. We forced to pick up arms. That's different. And if we have paid 100,000 price to liberate Syria and we'll have no dictatorship in the future, that's worth. Okay. Somehow, somewhere, you have to pay the price for your liberty. And if you take 100,000, you have to pay the price. If we did something like, for example, 20 years ago, maybe the price would be less. We'll have less people killed. Or we did something 30 years ago. We waited too long, but unfortunately, no one helping us. We get killed every day, and no one cares. The question is, ask you another question. All the time you're preaching about freedom and democracy. What are you doing to support freedom and democracy? You tell me you got killed, 100,000 people got killed fighting for freedom and democracy. Why don't you support them? Why don't you do something for that? You're asking us because we are looking for our freedom? Of course.
Then what happens then to get people to turn their invasion?
It's up to you. When you get George Bush to make the United Nations irrelevant and do what he think about false intelligence and invade countries, it's up to you to question that and not allow him to do that again, or Tony Blair, whatsoever. By the way, Tony Blair, okay, they led the war in Iraq and against the Saddam Hussein regime. He get paid now $5 million a year from the Kuwaiti government to work for the Kuwaiti government. Tony Blair, he get paid $5 million get paid from the Kuwaiti government to work as an advisor to Kuwaiti government. He's the one main player for the war in Iraq, as you know. He's the one campaign for the war in Iraq. So it's up to you to not to have elected some politician like him, or to hold him accountable for his action.
There was one here.
Can you speak about the security measures you took when you were reporting in Syria?
Security measure, you have to have a lot of information. The most important thing is information. Where the FSA are, where snipers are, who could be a risk to you, to have connections with the people, with the soldiers. So the more information you know, the better you are. Especially in a war like Syria, for example. We went to the old city a couple of days ago, and the old city was one spot like around 50 meters. If you go through that spot, it's a straight line, 50 meters. But across that is on top of the castle, Aleppo castle, there are snipers that can overlook this 50 meters. If you don't know, you have no information, you could easily cross that 50 meters and get shot and killed. You have to go around like 500, 600 meters around, not to pass this 50 meters. So what's important, information and to know what's going on in that area. After that you go.
What about communications wise? Did you watch like the emails you were sending, how you were sending out stories and that kind of stuff, or was it always through the Turkish media?
This is, I don't understand what you're talking about.
Did you have to take were you worried about security, for example, with your email? Is there some suggestion of people tracking email signals?
In the beginning, yes. But lately I told you, the government doesn't have any more manpower, doesn't have the technology or the equipment to do so. In the beginning, we used to be careful about anything we say between each other. We used to go to houses, inside the houses, put on small paper what we have to write on the sign. Someone else will drive motorbike to go to a different house, from different house to different house, just to write a sign. In the beginning, yes. Now become a bit easy because area has been liberated and government has nothing to do. I want to tell you something, for example. We're talking about businesses sometimes or signs. We confiscated some listening devices, tracks. Where it's made? In Sweden. Who made it? Sony Ericsson. Sweden until now still have the Syrian ambassador in Sweden. The only European country still have Syrian ambassador in Sweden. Why? The Syrian government bought military intelligence equipment from there. Other than that, the Foreign Minister of Sweden, Mr. Carl Bildt, has negotiated oil deal with the Syrian government on behalf of Linden Oil. And if you listen and you think about it, Sweden's only country, European country, they didn't report Syria, accept Syria to be reported to the ICC. All European countries, they agreed to report Syria to the ICC, the International Criminal Court, except Sweden. And this is one example of how things work.
Yes, I had a question. For you, question? Yeah, go ahead.
So, in terms of a citizen journalism in Syria, since they might not have formal training like say foreign journalists coming into do you think there's a possibility of them maybe using some influences in the conflict overseas?
Over. Citizen journalists really, I think sometimes they are very good because they report things the way they see it. Nothing, they don't have anything behind before, or they don't have anything in mind to put into the story. They just will videotape or they will write whatever they see. This is good because a lot of journalists, they come inside the conflict zone, they have something in their backhead, and they will report according to what they have in their mind. Citizen journalists, no, they will go write whatever they see. They have nothing. This is when they are young. When they become old, that's a different story.
I had a question about how you sort of see yourself. So, for example, do you consider yourself, would the word rebel apply to you?
No. For example, I disagree with FSA what they're doing, Syrian Army. Okay, we criticize them a lot. But as a rebel, I have to differentiate between journalist and civilian revolution and military revolution. It's connecting to each other, but not necessary to be rebel, really rebel. I don't know how to put it for you in a word, but a little bit different from each other.
Have you ever carried a weapon or used
No,
a weapon?
no, I never did. I will never do. This is why I am not rebel. I never bought a weapon, I never carried a weapon, and I will never do. I will criticize the FSA. But that doesn't mean I am not supporting the FSA. I am supporting the FSA, but I'm not rebel. So I'm a bit delicate how to put it.
So 1, 2, 3.
What about conduct of the city?
What the FSA, when the revolution started, most 18, 20 years guys, they start to go on demonstration. Like me, we used to stay behind. Okay, control things, tell them to want to demonstrate, what signs they put in. And when it become militarized, the revolution become militarized, I did not accept that. I don't want it to be militarized. So it was a bit some kind of rift between us. Okay, but we still have some moral authority over them. What we don't like about them acting on their own. For them, it's different group. They call it the grape way of operating. What does that mean? That you see the grape. So if one leader got killed, does not all of it fall apart. You take that spot, still the revolution hold. And so, but this has come some danger with it. Every group operate on his own. They won't listen to higher commander, or they don't have chain of command. Lately, it's been changing. There are some chain of command and some order with the FSA. We can put it this way.
I have two questions actually, sorry to take the time. The first question is, how do you deal with being an activist and yet a journalist who criticizes the FSA and yet still maintains access? How are you maintaining access as a local journalist to the actions? Sometimes as a journalist, if you criticize, they are cut off from access. So how do you sort of negotiate that? And the second question is, I'm really actually interested in what it was like for you working in the state media before, the state media, because as journalists, for example, working in Lebanon, we were conscious at the time of Syrian control of the media, the regime's control of the Syria over the Lebanese newspapers. So I'm actually quite interested in hearing about how it was to actually how you negotiated that within yourself. You obviously are a
principles of freedom of speech and things. So how did you?
The first question, okay, if you work with the people with the kids, they start the revolution, and you have credibility with them. You stay with them all the time, and they know what you believe. You are with them. When they attacked our town, we were there. When the military attacked us, we were there. We never left them alone. So if you have this kind of credibility with them, and sometimes you criticize them, okay, they will accept it. Maybe they will okay, but they will accept it, and you still have some moral authority. It comes from your credibility working with them for a long time. So you can somehow manage that. But if they trust you, that's it. You're not going to lose your trust by criticizing them. And after a while, they'll find out. For example, I criticized FSA in the beginning with foreign media. And one of the Tawhid Brigade leader came to me and said, yes, you are with us. Why you criticize us? I said, well, I criticize you for this reason. He said, well, I will advise you not to criticize us. And I told him, no, I will criticize you and do whatever you think. So we got this argument. 2 months later, he found out what I did was correct. They should be more organized. A lot of crimes happening should happen. So he came and said, okay, yes, sir, what we can do now? How will help us? Please help us. So somehow could work this out. The other things with the state-run media, I will tell you why I quit. One day was the General Assembly in September at United Nations. And our foreign minister used to be now our deputy president, Farouk al-Shara. And they called me and told me, yes, sir, our foreign minister here, please come to cover the General Assembly things. So I went to the General Assembly meetings, and then I have to send to my newspaper what I saw at the General Assembly discussions. The head of his office told me, go to the foreign minister, talk to him, and write whatever he wants. And after that, send it to Syria. I said, no, I won't do that. So I went back to the mission. I want to use their facts to send to my newspaper what I was supposed to send. And he said, no, you cannot use my facts, you use your own facts. So I told him this is a government thing. It's everything controlled by government. He said, no, so I quit. And he said, well, you get a lot of paid, yes, you are, because when you work for government in such position, they pay you money, everyone, you get access to everything, you become like part of the system. Unless you woke up one day and said, okay, I'm not part of this system, bullshit system anymore, that's it, I'm going to quit. And he told me, okay, go to use your own facts. I said, okay, that's it, this is the end of it. I quit. So this is how we quit to the government. Sometimes we wake up and say, okay, I cannot take this anymore.
And then do they try to punish your family or anything?
I didn't, but they punished me. For example, when I used to go visit Syria, I have to go to the Secret Service, report to the Secret Service every time, and that cost me a couple of days of trouble, back and forth until I get back of the town. But my family, my father, they punished him a long time ago. They kicked him out of the force because of political things. But every time you go to Syria, you see them at the border, you have to go to report to the Secret Service. They will interrogate you for 1 day or 2 days. After that, will let you go.
We're back here. Oh, sorry. No, you're yeah. No.
I just want to disagree with the word rebels. I don't think that fighters there can be assigned to the word rebels. Like I did quantitative research kind of thing, and you see all over the Canadian and American media the word rebels coming up. But the word rebel and definition, it's more like it just explains how a civil war is. So basically, a government against a group of militias, and that's what rebel is. But on the other hand, they should be called, for example, revolutionists, or people who are fighting for freedom fighters. Those kind of words, although they sound a bit tied to one side, but they are the real words. We don't have real rebels. We don't have people who are just fighting against in a civil war. And there's a million paper that was written here, and they call it civil war. There's a huge difference between civil war and what's happening.
Yeah, but you know why they're doing that? Because if they say revolution and not supporting revolution for democracy, okay, they have to explanation to do. So they call trouble, they call whatever it suits them, so we'll have no obligation to do something for that revolution.
But in fairness, I'm not defending because I see your point. It should be called an armed uprising or revolution. That's true. but the International Committee of the Red Cross, which is sort of the accepted by international law determinant of these things, has declared it a civil war. So, once that story is reported, then, and this sort of speaks to an earlier point you made about older journalists. I'm guilty of this as the next guy. Journalists are always writing that generals fall into the trap of fighting the last war. Journalists do the same thing. So when you covered, the people who I covered Kosovo quite extensively, and most of the people who were covering Kosovo had come from Bosnia, which is a totally different situation. In Kosovo, the West was supporting a fascist military organization called the Kosovo Liberation Organization, which just happened to be a convenient weapon to hit Slobodan Milosevic with. But they were fascists, and then they ended up committing ethnic cleansing and burning, Orthodox churches and all those things which are horrible, and paid no penalty for it. In the case of Syria, a lot of the people who are there just came out of Libya. So the template in their head is Libya or Egypt, and then those ones came out of Iraq. So a lot of the things you're complaining about are simply baggage that experienced journalists bring out of the last place. And as people who may be considering going into this kind of stuff, you should really try to cleanse your mind for each new one, so you're not making the mistake of the generals and fighting the last war instead of concentrating on this one.
Okay, sorry. We're talking about civil war. What is it? Civil war. That means civil fighting each other.
Right.
But in Syria, it's military against civilians.
Right.
How you can call it civilian conflict? It's civil war. It's military against civilians. It's not civilians against each other. So it's definitely not civil war. It's as simple as that.
In addition to that, like the reference that there was so-called rebels in Syria, and if you're talking about the way that they think of like Iraq or Libya too, those journalists are seeing different people. Like they're not seeing the same kind of people. And the only place that like I actually asked this question for you to answer, which is the first question about the Jabhat al-Nusra and Crown Sham. Those Jabhat al-Nusra doesn't even almost not exist in Aleppo. It only exists in specific places like Binish and like that. Even like Binish is a very small town, and like just the places around it where Taftanat and those areas. And this place is the only area where actually those rebels exist, or the people that came from Libya, Libya, Iraq, and Afghanistan. So I just want to point out that those rebels or those people that are there are not the same people those journalists are seeing. They have an agenda behind calling them rebels. They have something behind them calling them rebels, and that's true. Like just 2 days, like I think 3-4 days ago, CTV had a whole article written about calling it rebels are killing soldiers from other. Like I don't really know the title, but it's basically how just pointing out that also the Free Syrian Army are doing a lot of mistakes and not even mentioning the other side, and that's just been repeatedly happening within the media itself, and that is a very crucial thing. And coming back to the Red Cross, I'm so sorry. The Red Cross is an association within Syria. It's actually the only association or an NGO within Syria that's dealing with the regime itself. There has been $2 million.
But don't confuse the two. The International Committee of the Red Cross is recognized by international treaty. There,
I agree with you.
it's a fallible organization, but war. We can get into that discussion.
Yeah.
Trying to manage war and to define it and to apply rules to it, all of that's impossible too. But everyone agreed at one point that the ICRC would be the ones that decide these issues, and they've declared it a civil war. So, everyone sort of follows after that, and we call it a civil war. But I see your point.
Even what I'm trying to say is that even the Red Crescent or the Red Cross that have been sent towards as an association, it actually deals with the people on the ground in Syria. And there's a great example. The Canadian government actually said yes about it. When $2 million were sent to the Red Crescent or the Red Cross of International, they were sent to Syria eventually, and the Red Cross of Syria took them $2 million and they were associated with the regime, and the Canadian government said sorry about it. And you can go check out, but no one writes about this.
you don't see papers written about how the Canadian government sent money to the wrong NGO. I'm so sorry I'm taking this.
No, that's an important point. The Canadian media has completely blown coverage of Syria. We were talking earlier, Canada's an important member of NATO, but you would be hard-pressed to find a story in the mainstream media about what Canada's position is in NATO on the question of should we arm the rebels. Sorry to use the word. I find this astounding. How can we claim to be an important country in the world when our public is not even discussing what every nation in Europe is discussing right now? Should we arm the freedom fighters? It doesn't even come up here.
I just want to manage the time a bit, so I know I have a question waiting here, a question here. Anyone else who thinks they want to ask a question? So I've got 2 or 3 questions left, and then we'll probably come back to Paul and Yasser to give us some closing comments. So
I guess I just wanted to kind of to ask both of you, because I think this is an interesting kind of almost like a problematique of it, in the sense that there's a moral responsibility that you repeatedly keep mentioning about being a journalist, and not only being a journalist but being an activist in that sense, that you need to be able to criticize where you think something is going wrong, but there's this larger overarching movement for democracy and for freedom, and they both kind of operate within each other. And on the other hand, while you're mentioning this, first of all, this call for more of an activist journalism here in Canada, which I agree with, but then you're juxtapositioning it against this need for the most sensational imagery that you can find to get the base back home engaged, and then to engage their morality. So in the field, you really need to go in with your heart in one hand and ignoring it in the other, because you need the most brutal truths you can find. And I'm wondering then, with no access to the regime whatsoever.
But you've made an important point. It's incredibly fraught, and you don't want to put that power, and it is a power, in the hands of the wrong people. But there are people who can manage that power responsibly. The way I always look at this, because it's easier for me to visualize it, is photographers. I can stick a camera in your hand, as I had one in my hand in Rwanda, and there was a heap of dead children because someone had walked into a room where they were all hiding in a pile under a blanket and simply killed them all with an AK-47. Now you could stand there and photograph it, and it would be a heap of children with a bloody blanket over them, and nobody would print the picture. But James Knockway or any number of really artistic combat photographers would maybe, for instance, focus on the little hand that was sticking out. And they would make art out of the most horrific cruelty you can imagine. And in the wrong company, that would sound like I'm an idiot. But his job is to make people care. So he didn't want those kids killed, but he has the talent and the humanity to make the most compelling picture out of that nobody will turn away from. And there's the key. People are overloaded with information right now, so they're turning away by the droves. They're saying, oh my God, another Arab Spring problem. I don't want to hear about it. So it's incumbent on us to think, how do I make somebody care? And that doesn't mean you're going to distort the truth or impose an irresponsible bias or do anything evil. You're simply going to make your choices and write or shoot or do whatever you do in such a talented, human, artistic way that you're going to get people standing up and saying, I want to fix this. And that applies to City Hall, the Supreme Court, House of Commons, everything journalists do. To me, the first question is, how do I make people care?
And I think just to finish the thought, it's comparable to when Mason was talking earlier about we were working in Lebanon during the conflict there in the 6th. And with no access to the other side, then you have journalists who are coming in who are foreign and who, like we mentioned earlier, are not citizen journalists, but they're foreign and they're young, they're kind of cowboys, to use that word, or they're coming in looking for the adventure and whatnot. And so I'm wondering, on the ground, working in your country during this movement for freedom and democracy, how do you then feel when there are these foreign reporters who are coming in and they're coming in, and I think there's just a couple of points here. I think they're coming in, number one, looking for that big sensational story. They're coming in looking for the adventure. But they're also coming in saying, if I can't get access to the regime, I'm going to get some access so I can be objective. This is my first time, and I'm going to criticize the fighters. Because that's the only objectivity when you can't access both sides, is you try to show the worst, but then also be objective by saying that the people who are suffering aren't perfect either.
Right. I can tell you're absolutely right in the last point, because it's always in the back of my head that people are going to say he's gone local. He's like totally lost it, and he can't be trusted anymore.
Yeah.
So the quick antidote to that is criticize the good guys in that sense.
Just to show a little
That's right.
objectivity,
That's right. You're
So I'm
absolutely
wondering,
right.
being on the ground, because the introduction to tonight's topic was that this phrase and the fixer, and I remember I was kind of finding the phrase funny itself, but being a fixer on the ground, how do you negotiate that process of saying, okay, I criticize these guys myself, so I get that maybe you're going to criticize them a bit, but there's a larger picture here that we're really trying to fight for our freedom and democracy. I'm wondering how you convey that to foreign, like mediators who act as speaking to us.
You don't talk to him about it. Just let him see and write what he sees. And if he writes exactly what he sees, that's it. You are winning, because we have nothing to hide. We are at the right side. We are fighting for our freedom and democracy, so we have nothing to hide. And we do make mistakes. We are not perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. So if he saw an overall things and has some bad three bad things with it, there's no problem with that, as long as he see all the stories.
But
I worked with like over 200 journalists in the last 2 years. The only one guy, we not allowed to go back to Syria, and I'm sorry to say that, it's one guy from 200 journalists. All what he cared about, foreign fighters and extremists, was 1 year ago. And when 1 year ago we don't have too much problem with this, we don't have too much foreign fighters. Every time he come to Syria, to Aleppo, talk to me, he cares about this. This guy, yes, we forbid him. But if one guy like Paul or was other guys, they come look at this revolution as a whole and see some small things, whatever wrong with it, and report it. There's no problem with that. That's healthy.
I was going to jump in and say, are there, apart from the policy problem, are there just journalists who you can't stand? And you won't work with them? I hope I'm not one of them.
No. Some of them, yes, some of them we went to one situation and the journalist was dangerous area. And the journalist, he keep asking the same question over and over again. I told him, you're not doing too good. He looked at me like this. He said, okay, go ask the questions on my behalf. I'll be happy to do that. So there are some journalists really act different to danger. And they lose it sometimes. That's normal. It's not unusual. It's normal. Some people, they take like 5 minutes. I have one guy, he's 20 years old, 22 years old. He worked for European news agency. And he will take him 2 minutes to ask a question, and he will get 1 sentence answer. He spent 2 minutes, 3 minutes to ask the question. Go over around the questions, and he will get an answer 1 or 2 words. So after 10 minutes, we got 5 answers, and we got 10 minutes of talking. Sometimes these things happen.
And I'm not saying, because I don't know what's happening, but the sort of message I'm getting from you is that that's not really the case. Like, in fact, you would protest the term civil war. But leaving aside the word civil, is it a war? Is it two legitimate sides fighting each other? Obviously not equal. Obviously sort of not equal, but are the quote-unquote rebels participating in the destruction of Syria in Europe?
First, we have to talk about legitimacy. Okay, legitimacy comes from the people. If the people don't want to be their president anymore, so you lost your legitimacy. You are not legitimate leader anymore. If we are costing the rebels or whatever, if revolution costing any damage to the infrastructure, I will give you one story. I have one friend of mine. He used to work for the military intelligence. He used to be in Idlib. Got killed by a bomb. According to the government, he got killed by terrorists. So the president, we have a law. If you got killed, you're fighting for your country, the president will promote you to higher rank. Because his father was pro-government, after he buried him, he put a big sign on his door. Said, this is the house of Amin Najjar. He got killed fighting for his country, and the president promoted him to captain. And he put a big sign on his door. When the army came to our town, they burned his house. They burned his house. So if you see the sign, say this is guy who used to work for the government, and the president himself honored him and promoted him, and the military comes in and burn this house. You have no idea who is doing what. So how come someone worked for you, died for you, and you go burn his house? And who will go, for example, how are we going to destroy infrastructure with Kalashnikov or with RPG? Who will do that? Can you destroy schools, buildings, roads, whatever, by Kalashnikov? Until a few months ago, the FSA has only Kalashnikov and some RPGs. Who has a fighter jet? Who has a bombs, a rockets? So that's another lies or propaganda from the government. And I'm sorry, a lot of journalists also listen to that. When they came to my town, they burned 300 houses. I have a video. They put on the tanks washing machine and refrigerators and the blankets, and they took them with them on the tank. They used the tank to move the sinks. We have them on video tape. They went through another town was pro-government, and they allowed that town to videotape them with their tanks and have refrigerators and washing machine on their tanks. This is government destroying everything, not us. It's very simple, very obvious, not to everyone.
So the point of the Red Cross labeling this particular conflict as a quote-unquote civil war, I haven't read anything like that, but what are the reasons?
I studied international law years ago, so I should know these things, but I don't. But there is a checklist. It has to do with the number of combatants, the areas under their control, and what the definition of control is, that sort of thing. But there is sort of not terribly scientific, but there's a checklist where you then determine that they've met enough of the criteria that this is now a civil war. That's right. That's right. That's right. That's right. And this speaks to the point you just made. In a sense, people you asked earlier, should there be an armed uprising against a government? Unfortunately, written into that same formula, if I remember it right, is that once there is a full-scale civil war, then the people who are rising against the once accepted government internationally then have legitimacy. They're allowed to negotiate with foreign governments. They're allowed to receive armed aid. All these sorts of things. So written into our international system is actually an incentive to rise up with weapons, because you get better rights. You get more rights in the system. There's not a great amount of international law that supports peaceful demonstrators.
I have to just say one sentence for the Red Cross. The Red Cross in Syria, everyone knows it's biased and not objective at all. So I'm not really surprised to declare it's civil war. They've never been objective or been even-handed.
There was the last question over here.
Can you comment on the state of the Syrian media in general? I know it's a big question because different kind of media, but is it generally media that has the standards and equipped to deal in a post-Assad era and be able to rebuild, be part of rebuilding the media sector? I mean, are there schools of journalism? What is the standard of journalism, even though journalists cannot report politically on certain things, but there are certain things that they can report on and do well?
First, about the government media. Government media, it's 100% lies. Including myself, I used to lie. I'm being honest with you. Long time ago, we used to report about electing the president. We used to go to people, take their people opinion. People who are so afraid. If they hear I'm journalist coming from newspaper, belong to the government, they will tell me what I want to hear. That's it. And I did that myself for some time. So the government total lies. And I will give you one example what happened in my town. One time fighter jet came and attacked potatoes refrigerator. Potatoes refrigerator. It was 10 people offloading potatoes. And they killed 7 of them. I was there with a group of journalists like 20 minutes later. Still blood on the walls, everything. We saw the onion inside, the potatoes inside. And that evening, the state TV reported fighter jet attacked home depot for weapon storage area in Mara and destroyed that storage area. That's regarding the government. Regarding us, working with journalists and bringing along foreign journalists to come in and report freely, that's part of what we want to do in the future. And what we're doing now, we're sending people, in the 15th, for example, in February, we're going to have a group of people go out of Syria to Turkey, have training, seminars, and we've been doing this for the last year, training people outside to learn and to know how to report, how to become reporters, and to know about the Western media, to be free reporters. So we're working on that. We have long way to go, but we're trying to do that. There are some people really believe in the media or in journalism.
Actually, I just want to add the same exact point. I know like over 30, 40 people who have left Syria to Turkey for 15 to 20 days training session, and they teach them how to deal with every kind of, maybe it's a fast, like it's a really short term, but it's very very directed towards what they need to do. I'm telling you what, like 3 of them that I've known, they went inside, but like they went into Syria again. The videos that we used to get out, they would Facebook me and they were like, okay, the video I just taped is on Al Jazeera. It was up to the level that it would be on various media outlets just out of this 15 to 20 days training session. So we are on the right track. I just believe so, and I could see the difference. Like I could see how they were
I want to say something about Syria. Sometimes we have what we call town hall meeting. You have it here or you have it in the state, and we have some political discussion. And when you talk to the people about the future of Syria, about politics, role of women, role of minorities in our society, we will be amazed how people are willing to talk. They just want to get something out of their system. Talk about politics, discussing the role of women, role of Alawites, role of Christians. People that have been 40 years, they cannot talk about anything except look for food and water and something else. So people of Syria, they really want looking for their freedom. And I think they won't lose the opportunity to build or put Syria on the right track if they get the opportunity and success.
I want to invite both of you to just say something in closing.
Okay, I'll start. You can finish. Because my principal obsession with the subject is the role of activism in Western journalism. Sometimes it's easier to look at these things with the distance of history. So I offer as an example the pre-World War II Spanish Civil War. And imagine yourself at this age embarking on a career as a journalist, and there is the Civil War going on, and it's a war against fascism, and most of the European powers are doing nothing to help the resistors against fascism, even though everyone knew it was evil, and that if allowed to succeed in Spain, it would spread, and it would become a plague across the world. And you would have to ask yourself at that time, which side am I on? Am I on the side of the fascists, or am I on the side of the resistance? I can't see it any other way in Syria. You have to ask yourself, which side are you on? Are you on the side of a regime that fires Scud missiles, probably chemical weapons, etc., into residential areas and is committing mass murder every day? Or are you on the side of the people who are trying to build a democratic country? I think the answer is obvious, and then you work from there. You try to control yourself, control your emotions, be objective, get as much facts as you can, and criticize where necessary. But you have to pick a side. Yes.
I think being a journalist, it's the most interesting job you could possibly do. But I stress you have to be morally responsible for what you write. Because it's what you write, it's weapons. The same as any other kind of weapons. If you have no moral behind that what you write, you could contribute to some mass killing or whatever, if it's not now, in the future. So watch what you write and be morally responsible for what you write and for the people you write for, or for the future of your country too. Journalism, it's very important weapons. Use it the right way.
Amen.
Well, I want to thank both of you for being here. This has really been a privilege, and I'm glad we're recording so that others will get a chance to look at this. Because, I mean, Paul was talking about history, the advantage of distance and looking back on conflicts. And I just think I've looked a lot at Rwanda and the way the media dealt with Rwanda. And what's very striking is there were virtually no Rwandan journalists who were able to do anything. They were dead. Anyone who would try to document what was happening, what government forces and the forces of genocide were doing, was killed. And others were too terrified or literally unable. Hardly anyone was able to actually practice independent journalism during that conflict. So it's as if we have no way of getting an accurate journalistic record on the ground. So we look at what the foreign correspondents did. And when we're studying journalism and conflict, I think we're guilty of a bit of chauvinism, of being drawn to the Pauls who've gone somewhere to report a conflict. And we look at the way journalists go and report a conflict that they're not part of, that it's somebody else's war. So it's such a privilege to be able to hear from someone who is living and breathing this conflict and trying to perform the role of a journalist and help us have that record, because who can document this better than someone who lives in this society, understands what's going on, who knows the actors, and can maybe help the world figure out what's happening. So it's just, I'm glad Paul suggested that we hold this event this evening and help to make it happen. So I'm so glad that we were able to hear from you and to really hear from a Syrian journalist. People can call you an activist if they want, but a Syrian journalist who is documenting these events and helping to create a record that we can go back to. So I want to thank both of you, and Yasser especially for sharing this with us. And let's keep in touch. And Carlton has done some training activities. We've done it in Rwanda, we've done it in Kenya and South Sudan, other places. So maybe we should be, like, I need another project, but maybe we should be trying to figure out how could we set up shop somewhere in Turkey for now and help to run some basic training. Paul would be a wonderful professor emeritus.
I mean, after all, this is not a myth. That is the surest guarantee against extremism winning in Syria that I can think of. If there's an army of trained journalists, they'll make sure that's a free democratic society.
So thank you very much. This was great, and look forward to continuing to talk to you and hear about what's happening.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
We have a seminar on April 15th, which is